Hey, folks. Not that everybody's actually watching, but welcome to Thursday Night Live with Remy. Wow, come on, video, catch up, adjust exposure. Do I need to be wearing a light shirt or something? Welcome in. I'm still trying to figure out why it decided to blow me out in terms of lighting. I think it's the dark shirt again. But I think we're going to start out with what the hell is Trudeau thinking? Like, they just keep doubling down on the tyranny and the hostile government kind of thing. Like, the protesters aren't asking for a lot. They're asking for things that much of the world is already doing. They're just asking for it to be Canada. And I guess that was one of my subscribers who couldn't stay because they thumbs up and left. It's all good. Yeah, I don't understand. They're not asking for a complete, just drop it and forget about it kind of thing. They're literally saying, hey, we had these exemptions. We have a particular situation. We want to extend that. We want to continue that. Meanwhile, the rest of the world's going, we don't care. This is over. This is done. We're moving on with life, right? And Trudeau's like, no, fuck you. We're going to just double down on, totalitarianism, regardless of how that looks. He's a prime minister. He is not a president he can literally be booted out anytime. They can literally call a special election and oops, his party doesn't have enough seats. Bye. So I don't understand how his party thinks this is going to hold up. At the very least, they're going to have legal challenges. Like, they're going to keep this up, and then there's going to be some serious legal challenges. It's not the US. Their laws are different. That's one thing that is hard for people to remember, is they don't have the same legal structure. They are much more like the British legal structure, where the government really does have a lot of ability to fuck with the citizenry without consequences. It's much more like what we have now in practice, as opposed to what we have by intent. But things like, getting a warrant for these bank account locks that they're doing, these crypto transaction, I don't even know what to call it. They're basically saying, we're going to freeze your account. Well, that's a cute idea. You can't freeze a non-custodial wallet, but you can make Coinbase freeze somebody's account. But Coinbase is probably going to want some legal action involved here. But your bank account, if you have a Canadian bank account, they can absolutely do that. Doesn't make it right, but they can do it. The problem is going to come, a lot of these truckers are not Canadian. It's not how this works. Truckers for North America are truckers for North America. Some are American, some are Mexican, Central American even. The trucking routes are all over the map. And even the Canadian ones, they get exposed to the US an awful lot. They have some expectations of freedom that are not necessarily being followed here. And what if their account isn't in Canada? What if it's in a US bank? I mean, I used to, when I lived up north, I used to go to Canada on a semi-regular basis. When I lived in Western New York, it was a common thing. There were some outlet malls right across the border that were excellent. Niagara Falls was very nice from the Canadian side. There were some casinos up there that people would go to just for entertainment, not even to gamble, but they had entertainment there. Some good restaurants. It was literally like just going to the other side of town. And I didn't ever think twice about accessing my bank account. I put my ATM card in the bank ATM, in the machine, and got money out. Like, you go to Toronto and, I want some money. You go to an ATM, you look at the fee schedule and you go, yeah, I'm willing to pay $5 in fees to get out a couple $100, so I'm good for the rest of the weekend. And, if you're one of these truckers at the protest, okay, so they're going to charge me $10 in fees. I'm going to pull out $5,000. I'm good for the rest of the month for food and fuel and whatever else it takes, and I can help my buddies and so on. Well, if that's a U.S. bank account and you tell the bank to freeze it, you could have some real issues. I don't know that our State Department under Biden would do anything, but the legal consequences of that could be very interesting. There are laws about international banking. Crypto is not national. Like my wallet for crypto, for my Bitcoin, for example, other than what I have on an exchange that has an actual, like, this is a US based exchange kind of thing, it doesn't have an address. It isn't US based or Canada or Germany, or it's just a number on a computer system that is everywhere. It's worldwide. In fact, you could say it's not even just worldwide, because some of it goes over satellites, right? So if you're telling them, hey, we're going to freeze your cryptocurrency wallet, yeah, you could try. The legal consequences, if you manage to somehow convince other places, other exchanges that, hey, I can't transfer from my wallet to your exchange. Interesting. That could go badly. Because all I would do, from my perspective, I'm not in Canada, but I get a VPN and I open an exchange somewhere else and go transfer my funds that way. Now, when I transfer back to my bank, I clear it out to cash and transfer that to my bank, it's not coming from the account you froze. What are you going to do about it? Oh, you froze that bank account. Okay, I can open a new bank account overseas with just, pictures of my identity. These are not new things. I have not opened a bank account by going into a bank in 20 years, I think. Maybe 15, but I think the last one I did was it was right after I moved to Connecticut. So like 17 years. Very true, King Arthur. And they I don't know if they paid for it in the normal sense, but they sure as hell got a lot of negative press for it. And I'm not sure how much it really saved them. I'm sure it saved them right then, but overall, a lot of customers said, hey, we don't trust you anymore. If that's the best you can do, if you have to basically violate the ethics of the situation in order to protect yourself, do I really want my money in your fund? But yeah, Canada is absolutely, they're not socialist in the, hey, we're going full on communist kind of sense, but absolutely, compared to the US historically, they are very much socialist. And it's a conscious decision. I'm not even making a judgment call. They have made a decision, very much like some Scandinavian countries, to have very strong socialist elements in an otherwise capitalist country, but they give their government a lot of power in that system. Sorry, guys, hot chocolate is hot and very good. But like I said earlier, they have a system that gives the government a lot of power, not a whole lot of restraints. If the government chooses to act, really they're limited by public appearances. How many people are going to object, how strongly, and with what. But I think that's the key here, because so do I. But it is 7:00 at night, and I would like to go to bed at some point. I did have a coffee earlier when I got home from fishing. Otherwise, I would probably be asleep by now. I was exhausted, but not going to have another cup at this hour. But I think that they are shooting themselves in the foot, because their banking system is relatively fragile right now. and their overall economy is relatively fragile, and you are literally pissing off the people who determine whether goods get delivered in your country. The Teamsters Union is not as powerful there as it is down here, but it is still extremely strong. And they're going out of their way to fuck with the Teamsters Union. Now, I've worked with the Teamsters Union. I have been a manager for a company that had Teamsters working for it. And as a whole, as an organization, I might not particularly like them, but they absolutely look out for their members and don't respond well to being bullied. You can argue with them, you can debate with them, you can, disagree with them. And they respect that. They understand that not everybody's going to have the same opinion. They're looking out for their members. You're looking out for your company. And there may be points where that fundamentally are disagreements. You can't both win, right? And other times you can. You come to an agreement where this is actually a positive for both sides. Nobody's losing anything. I was the safety director for a company, and absolutely, there were times where we had an issue, and the union started off going, you can't do this to our employee, our person, and blah blah blah. And we'd say, well, they're endangering your other members. So it's your own policy to comply with this regulation. We're not trying to enforce anything weird. We're saying, here's the rules that are set down by you, the government, and us. We're all in agreement here, right? This is the rule. And if you violate it, there have to be consequences. You're endangering other people, including other Teamsters members. But on the other hand, they would absolutely go to bat for their members, even when their member was absolutely wrong, if it was in their interest, just to protect their membership from being bullied by an employer or anybody else. That's why the union exists. Whether it's really needed in this day and age, sometimes we can argue about that, but you don't just get into a fight with them over something that the rest of the world is adopting, and going back to, really. I mean, adopting is the wrong word, right? I don't know. I am not clear enough on the Canadian economy and legal system in this sense to know how bad it will get. But I do not see a good outcome, even if the Canadian government thinks they win. They shut down the protest and arrest everybody. Okay. And you just arrested 10% of the truckers in Canada? What does that do to your economy? like no joke. If it's so bad that they're sitting there, what are you going to do to them? You arrest them? You take their truck? You take their license? You freeze their bank account so they can't operate? How is that going to play out? I saw firsthand how dependent many companies are on timely deliveries. You have a reserve, but if you don't get deliveries for a couple days of key things, it can be very bad. And things that routinely you can't get that quickly, you keep a larger reserve. But a lot of stuff you can't. It just practicality wise, you're getting a delivery from somewhere that's relatively close by, say within 200 miles. So you can expect regular deliveries. You keep enough for that blizzard, for that, the truck breaks down and it has to come, 2 days later because that's the next scheduled delivery, whatever it is. But you don't have weeks worth. And interestingly, one of these things, or one of these markets that is like that, is the healthcare industry. Hospitals don't have weeks worth of critical supplies. They may for certain soft goods. Historically, they were supposed to have weeks worth of masks and gloves, right? Needles, IV supplies, not necessarily fluids, but the actual hardware. But IV fluids, you can go through very rapidly, and they have an expiration date. So the hospital only keeps so much on hand. Oxygen, other breathing mixtures, because it isn't just oxygen. These are all things that are supplied kind of a continuous rotation. And the hospital will have several days worth, but that's it. They only have so much storage, and your supplier is usually local. Even if you have your own bulk tank, you've got a liquid oxygen tank out back. Generally, you have that because you go through so much of it that it isn't practical to get it in compressed gas form. You need it in liquid form. That tank still needs filled regularly. Guess who does those? Guess who drives that truck and hooks it up and fills it? Yeah, Teamsters. Um, Whether they work for Air Gas, All Gas, Prax Air, any of the companies, they're Teamsters. It is what it is. So, wasn't that always how it works? The guys with enough clout step on the guys who don't have enough to stop them. So okay, that I didn't see it. So uh, yeah, we'll see. I mean, they keep pissing people off, and a couple recalls. Suddenly, some independents or a different party that isn't part of his party, switches sides. Like I said, I don't know enough about their situation to know how quickly a recall can happen and how quickly a how big his party is relative to the ones that may switch sides on that issue. Because remember, they don't have a two-party system. They have to form a government. If you don't have enough people that agree with you enough to say yes, we're with them for this, and just because you're with them on another topic, you may say, you know what, on this one we're not. And by the way, we're not with you. We're with your party, but not with you anymore. So it happens. We've seen it happen in Britain, and we've seen it happen in Australia at times. I don't know that it's ever happened in Canada. Although usually it takes war. It takes an actual war. People getting shot at. So I don't know. This is one of those, I don't have an answer. I don't have enough knowledge, but I have literally watched from a distance, catching up with it on Twitter and the occasional news report that I can trust. And it has been just one thing after another of them just absolutely sticking their foot in their mouth, shooting themselves in the foot, pissing off people that, yeah, you might have power over them, but can you afford to have them stop doing what they do? Because it isn't just the current truckers that are there. If you piss off the Teamsters Union enough that they say, you know what, we're no longer making deliveries to the Canadian government until they change their mind. They're not going to blackmail them about, hey, these charges you pressed against these people, you have to drop the charges. They wouldn't do that because you're getting all sorts of legal hassles. But there's no legal repercussions of them saying, sorry, no Teamster is going to be involved in a delivery to your location. That literally, the company the Teamsters work for may have a problem, but they probably don't have any way to even take it out on the Teamster. Yeah, but in his case, I think it's more just incompetence and straight up idiocy. I don't think he's all there. Whereas Trudeau knows what he's doing. Like he is absolutely competent, absolutely knows what he's doing, is making a decision, and just don't know that he's really aware of how it looks, because he's gotten away with this kind of thing in the past. But the world has changed. It isn't like it used to be, where if you controlled the media, you could control the narrative. And where you could fake it enough. Like, when it was just Facebook, you could control it. You could put enough spin on it that people didn't really know what was going on. Now, I can hop on Instagram right now and do a live reel, and 5,000 people see it in the next 5 minutes. If I was a Canadian trucker up there, hell yeah, constantly. Show it constantly. Literally have Billy Bob does it, Joe does it, Mike does it, Jim does it, whoever, just go down the line of drivers. Even if you've got to hand the phone off because they don't have their own Instagram account, have them all create Instagram accounts. Flood Instagram with their story. The fact that it's not being done more already amazes me. But truckers, they're a weird group, technologically speaking. They're not generally not tech savvy. What they are is not savvy about using it to influence. They tend to be actually very competent at using it for themselves, but using it to manipulate people isn't really something they're generally up on. That's not their market, right? They're not a social media influencer group. But then you get into, well, they have families. These drivers have families. Truck driving is not generally a low pay career. It isn't. You're not going to get rich generally, but it's not minor. Yeah. And I mean, even YouTube is not great because it does get some censorship. You have to hunt. Like, sometimes you don't, but sometimes you do. But things like Instagram with a reel, it's there. Like, it's boom. It's done. It goes out, and sure, they might turn it off 5 minutes later. Oh well, a lot of people saw that. Same thing with Twitter. Twitter isn't very good at stopping it from going out. They're very good at deleting it later, at blocking your account later, at banning you later. But the message gets out. In fact, Defiant L he's like a mirror account. He takes what people have said over the years and he screenshots it basically against the situation now, or something you said more recently, or you did something, and he puts them together into a Twitter post and shows that. He isn't adding anything. He is not saying anything. He is not even providing commentary. He got banned from Twitter yesterday. And this morning he was back because they tried to ban him. What was the reason? It was something stupid. It was blatantly that they didn't like what he was showing. He was showing off the idiocy. Yeah. No joke. They do. And he absolutely has been on a tear, showing off the hypocrisy of the left. And he is not particularly right wing. Like, he is not. It's literally anybody doing this kind of stuff he will target. That's what he does. And he had some real good ones yesterday, and they banned him. And I want to say it was a couple 100,000 people liked, retweeted, and so on, a request to have him reinstated, basically bitching at Twitter. And he's very popular in the crypto community, but not just the crypto community. And the crypto community, I don't know if you're aware, you probably are. If you're this into paying attention to what's going on, you probably are, at least somewhat, is not right-wing, left-wing, libertarian, anarchist. It's not anything. It's everything. Every type of person, like from Karen through Hitler, if he was still alive, he would be a crypto guy. Everybody is. And it's not that everybody in every group is, but there are people from every group. And I didn't see a single person who was like, yeah, screw Defiant L. He deserved it. Everybody, even if you didn't like him, even if you weren't a follower, it was constant. Like there was a constant stream in my feed of retweets, likes, comments on it, and boom, this morning back. And I mean, that's one part of it. That's for a lot of people, that's the key part of it. Um, but there's still a genuine core of people who view it as free money, not free as in like I got it for nothing, but money that the government doesn't control, and the ability to exchange value without a permission slip. The ability, for example, um, when my parents couldn't get it, couldn't understand why I was like, this is an important thing. This frees people to move things and move assets. I said, okay, in theory, I can send money via Western Union to somebody in Europe. That's a great theory. What if there's no Western Union because it got blown up? If they have internet access, I can send them crypto. They can sell that crypto for something else. They can convert that crypto to local currency. There's no, well, I can't send dollars to that country, or there's a limitation on how much or how long or a delay. Click, 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 boom, they've got it in whatever amount I want to do. And this can be to somebody in Germany or England or France, or this can be to somebody in deepest, darkest, middle of nowhere Africa, who's got a cell phone connected to the cellular network, and he's got internet access that's measured in KB a second. I got news for you. Africa is one of the biggest users of crypto because it works. And, if you're talking real inflation, not the mess we have here in the US, but hyperinflation where, 1 minute your wheelbarrow of cash buys you a house, and the next minute your wheelbarrow of cash buys you toilet paper for the day. Yeah, having that in crypto would be awful nice. And we're seeing that worldwide. Just to keep on the crypto topic, one of the things that I was on a rant today about on Twitter, I woke up this morning and was like, I don't want to get out of bed, and I went on like a half-hour long Twitter run. Was that El Salvador is literally setting themselves up to be a major banking nation, to be not traditional banking, but a financial powerhouse in their area. Not now, not even a couple years from now, but by like 2030, when the rest of the world economy that doesn't adjust is still having issues. No, excuse me. Is still having problems and is just struggling to recover. Well, their government issued currency may be worth jack shit. The IMF may have completely blackballed them. Oh well, they're not going to care. That's literally their point about making it a legal currency for them. They don't care. They're saying this has value regardless. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that things like that are going to bite them in the butt because administrations change, and they change faster when you piss people off that much. And it's not the one thing. It's not like the YouTuber who gets arrested for the lightning link thing. It's that you keep pushing and people start going, well, I didn't agree with that idiot. But on the other hand, I can now see that idiot could have been me, that they don't like what I'm doing either. And they could just as easily be doing that to me. And that's not okay. When you make everybody nervous about it, they start saying, well, maybe the government shouldn't be able to do that. Maybe the government should have to follow the rules that are set down in our founding documents. Yeah, it should bite them. I'm a big proponent of the next American Revolution is not going to be fought with guns or any kind of violence. It's literally going to be recall after recall after recall after recall. And then, oh, you got elected and you have a 2-year term, say. You didn't do anything we liked. We didn't like how you voted. Guess what? You're out. Next. No, I don't care that the next guy doesn't sound any better. We're not letting you stay unless you're doing what we think you should be doing. Next, 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 until the people going into office realize, oh, gosh, maybe I should do what my constituents want, not what's good for me, not what's good for the government itself, but what's good for the people. And it's a tough concept for a lot of them, particularly the ones who've been there for decades. They look at the world through their own lens, right? We all do. But their lens has become so warped by where they've been for so long that they need to go. Whether you agree with, a lot of what they do or not, it's like, you got to go. Next, next, next. Just keep throwing people out until you're getting the government you want. And I mean, maybe the answer is that we have 100% turnover in Congress in the next 8 years. I'm okay with that. Is that going to make it difficult for Congress to function for a while? I'm okay with that. Just like we have laws that get passed and they never seem to get repealed. And hey, maybe, you get enough changeover going and you can get enough people on board with the idea of every law sunsets every 4 years, every 6 years, whatever it is. A relatively short, but not super short time span, long enough for it to do something and be seen, the results to be showing a little bit. And you say they automatically sunset unless they get revoted. If you have a core set of laws that, hey, every 4 years, you've got to reapprove them, not argue over them all again. Here's the law. It's currently in effect. We're just saying, are we continuing this? Yes, no. Well, there's a lot of laws that in 4 years, people are going to go, I don't think so. We don't necessarily think that was such a great idea. But you couldn't get the votes to modify it or throw it or remove it, right? That's a whole different thing, because now somebody's going to argue, well, I mean, you're voting against this group of people getting the benefits they need and this and that. And somebody's always losing, right? So you can make that person voting to get rid of it look bad. But if it's just straight up, are we continuing it or are we not? And it has to happen constantly. I agree. Term limits, absolutely. And I think short. I don't think it should be 20 years. I think it should be maybe 2-3 cycles. I do think it can't be super short, because there is a learning process. You come into Congress and your first term very much is learning what the hell you're doing, like the physical process of it. But then do you get 20, 30 more years, 40 more years? I mean, come on. Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying like the founding document. I'm saying like, we're a gun channel, right? They passed a new gun control law. Well, when they passed the assault weapon ban in the Clinton era, it sunsetted. Now, it was a long sunset, but it sunsetted. They could not get the votes to continue it. I think that should be the norm. I think it should be, if Congress is passing a law, the law should automatically expire after a short time period, 4-6 years. I hate to say even just 4, because a lot of stuff, okay, you pass the law and it doesn't go into effect for 6 months to a year, because there has to be an adjustment period for whatever you're doing, whatever the law is. It's affecting something, right? Otherwise you wouldn't bother. So there has to be an adjustment. People have to get ready for it, whatever it is. And then there's going to be a time period where you don't see any results. Even if it goes into effect immediately, in terms of, you do something and there's a result. It takes time to gather that data, bring it back, and look at it and go, well, this was good or bad. And some of this stuff, it takes years and years. Like, it can take 5 or 6 years just to see the trend line adjust. It's one of the things that bothers me with how we handle healthcare laws in this country. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this and it's going to be great. And the problem is that it might be great for the first year or two, but then there's consequences down the road. But it looks great for the first year. And then it's permanent and nobody looks at it again. It doesn't sunset. And it goes both ways. Like the Republicans do this too. This isn't a left versus right thing. Every party, every politician proposes laws that it'd just be nice if they didn't last until somebody got the votes together to get rid of it, because they never seem to. They just pass something else. Speaking of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, it'd be nice if they actually applied. Just saying. If they would actually take that and go, hey, this says this, maybe we should follow that. I came from a state that called itself the Constitution state and had some of the strictest gun control in the country. They violated the Second Amendment left and right on a continuous basis. Every time you turned around, they were proposing something, and there were never any consequences. The state Congress would literally propose things that are so unconstitutional that if they passed it, if they managed to get it through, it would have resulted I hate to call it civil war when it's just internal to a state, but there would have been violence. And they proposed it. They voted on it. And you're telling me that there should not be consequences for the people who voted yes on something that is blatantly in violation of our founding documents. This is a violation of their oath of office. Why are there not consequences? I saw something earlier and there's context that I'm not aware of. There's legal issues here I'm not aware of. So it's the concept, not the details in this case. AOC was involved in getting stimulus checks for illegals after the fact checkers had sworn up and down, and the Democrats had sworn up and down that no, that's not going to happen. Absolutely not. No. You're conspiracy theorying and all that jazz, right? I don't know if she did it on Twitter or where it was a linked video. But she outright said, yeah, we got stimulus checks for illegals. Totally did it. Yeah. I'm proud of this. You gave government money, meaning my money, meaning taxpayer money, to somebody who is a walking crime. I don't care if they're the most wonderful person in the world, are working hard, have committed no other crime. You have entered the country illegally. And despite what our government would like to do about it and how they would like to look at it, this is a crime. It absolutely is. Whether they do anything about it or not is a whole other story. How we should open our borders or not is a whole different thing. I'm not a fan of highly restricted immigration, actually. I think that it should be controlled, but I'm actually a fan of open borders. I think the difference is that an open border doesn't mean the person just comes across, and if they're found to be guilty of criminal activity or otherwise, like there's no issue there. Like you just let them in. I'm just saying that if somebody is following all the procedures, applies for a visa or even citizenship, let them go through the process and do it. Don't block that. But they have to follow the process. Sneaking across the border is a crime. Why are you giving them money? If you can find them to give them a check and they can cash that check or deposit that check, guess what? You should be arresting them. and deporting them. Hell, I don't care if you walk them across the border into the no man's land between the US and Mexico, or the US and Canada, in that strip of concrete between our border checkpoint and their border checkpoint, and go, hey, you are no longer in the US. Excellent. You have been officially deported. Now, sir, would you like admission to the United States? Let's talk about it. Have you been convicted of any crimes? No. Are you of sound mind and body, or, at least some value thereof, right? Yes. Are you planning to commit any criminal acts? No. Are you a member of any extremist groups that we're worried about? No. Welcome to the United States. God bless. Power to you. One more for the melting pot. And let them across. Hell, give them a freaking bus ticket to wherever they want to go in the US. Because if you're deporting them, they probably had a job somewhere, right? They probably were working somewhere, had a family somewhere. Like, they probably were set up somewhere. Hey, take them right back. I will pay for that. Put it on government expense on my tax dollars. I will sign off on that as a bill. Absolutely. But now they're not illegally here. They didn't commit a crime by entry, and I'm good with that. And I understand that is not necessarily a widespread popular opinion. People seem to be one way or the other on that issue, and I am kind of in a weird spot. I think more people agree with me than are willing to say it. And then obviously there's some flexibility to that. Everybody's got a different spot for that. I have had a bunch of friends who were not here illegally. They were here on either student visas or work visas, and were good people working hard. All of them were doing what they were supposed to be doing, and just couldn't get them renewed. One of them was a student in school, paying her own way. She had, cash flow was not an issue for her. She was literally just trying to finish school and was going home. Like, she went to a school that was specialized in a certain thing and just wanted to finish her degree before she left, and had been told, there will be no problem extending your visa. She was from Italy. No problem extending your visa. This is like 10 years ago, by the way. Okay, this is like 20 years ago. No problem extending your visa. Don't worry about it, right? And she's got 2 more semesters. This is a trimester school plus a summer where you could use that as a semester. And she's only got to do 2 more. So like less than half a year. And they wouldn't give her an extension. They wouldn't renew it. Nothing. She's like, why not? I literally have to go home for, like 6 months, and I can reapply, which is going to take like 6 months, and then I can come back. Come on. And wouldn't let her. Said, nope, you got to leave. I have had friends who literally were here on a work visa and were doing their job at work, not committing any crimes, had an apartment, were working hard. And oops, your visa only lasts so long, and we're going to kick you out. And armed officers showed up at their door, threatening them because they hadn't sent in some paperwork saying, yes, I'm leaving. Mind you, the paperwork wasn't due for like another week. In fact, depending on whether I believe the person entirely or not, it crossed in the mail. They were prone to exaggeration on this stuff. So it may have just been that they had it all done. They just hadn't mailed it. But either way, armed officers showed up and were very hostile. And I know that because, well, they videoed it. Well, actually, their kid videoed it. But you're telling me you can do that, but you can't keep somebody who illegally crosses the border in a holding facility before you take them back across the border? Did you let them out with nothing to keep track of them? I got problems with that, particularly when the track record for the US government in making sure these people are not potential problems is pretty shitty. I'm sure they're right 99% of the time, right? Probably 99.9% of the time. 99.99% of the people who illegally cross the border do not have malicious intent and never do anything wrong while they're here. The only thing they've done wrong is crossing the border illegally. But if you're the government and you've got the person in custody, if your percentage of people you let go after you have them in custody includes a significant percentage of extremists who then commit violent acts, maybe you should change your policy. I don't, just say it. And I know it's not easy. It is. There's no easy answer for these things, because the easy answer of, just lock it all down and blah, 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 that's not realistically easy or practical either. You run into the opposite problem. You run into a government that is doing something horrible in the interest of expediency, because the government doesn't know how to have moderation. Like, that isn't something they're capable of. Governments either don't follow the rules or they follow the rules slavishly. And neither one of those works real well for gray situations, right? I don't know how we got off on this tangent. But anyway, I might as well finish the hour sort of on topic. How long do we think the US has before all of the COVID restrictions are lifted? Because we're literally watching it melt down day by day now. Recalls in San Francisco for the school board, masks being removed, the vaccination mandates being lifted, and I'm seeing some numbers that are making it very interesting for the vaccination results among healthy mid-bracket adults, because the numbers were based off, meaning the numbers I was looking at were based off of insurance information from employed people. This was employee healthcare stuff. And they were seeing a very large increase in people being very sick, not COVID, people dying out of normal percentages. It's going to be interesting. I think that a lot of things that should have been tested more weren't. And the people that should have been getting the vaccines first didn't. Because certainly if you are a high-risk individual, if you are elderly, if you have a weakened immune system, the consequences of a less than perfectly safe vaccine may be lower percentage-wise than getting a disease like COVID. If you are already somebody who COVID is going to be very bad for, if you get a bad case, that small percentage, but if your percentage is higher than average, this might be significant, right? And then the percentage of problems from a vaccine, you might look at those and go, well, my odds are better over here. I get the vaccine. Whereas your odds, if you're me, average middle-aged guy with no health issues, you look at the percentages and you go, I'm good, thanks. And if your job required you to get the vaccine, if your government required you to get the vaccine and boosters and so on and so forth, and they made the agency, the company immune, they've assumed liability. They may think they didn't, but I'm betting that if enough people wind up with health issues from this and can prove it, and you need enough that there's scientific proof of this, right? That you can convince a court, that the US government might find that they are not as immune from being sued over this as they think. The federal government found out the hard way recently that they are not immune from getting sued. They're immune from their employees getting sued. If you are a government employee and you do something that negatively impacts somebody else, you are protected. In fact, even at state levels, for a lot of things, they're very protected. But the way the law was written, and this is Holcomb versus U.S., I think, or Holbrook or something. It was a church shooting where the U.S. Air Force did not provide the NICS system with information about the shooter. So he was legally able to purchase firearms because they had not told the NICS system that he was prohibited. And then he shot up a church and killed a bunch of people and wounded a bunch of people and was eventually stopped. People sued because the government had failed to do their duty. They had an obligation, a requirement to do this correctly and had failed. And they weren't suing the Air Force person. They weren't suing a particular person at the FBI or anything like that. They were suing the U.S. government for failing to do its duty. And I think that the fact that won, they won a bunch of money, not an insignificant amount of money. Well, it takes time to rewrite that law. I mean, there's a whole bunch of Congress people who are sitting there, their aides are sitting at the computer typing to rewrite this, right? But that takes time. And in this current climate, are you the congressperson who wants to vote for that? If what you're doing gets out, that's the kind of thing you pass in the middle of the night. That's the thing you don't talk about it. You pass that without people knowing what you're passing. Because right now, okay, say 40% of the population is 100% on board and believes that it's all perfectly safe. Like blindly 100% drink the Kool-Aid. And 20%, it was the right thing to do, but there were some risks and maybe they weren't properly evaluated. There wasn't enough time, and we understand, but there may have been some problems. And then there's 40% who go, no, you freaking fucked this up. You made us take something that isn't safe. You didn't properly test it, and you gave somebody else immunity from the consequences of that. You pushed this, you forced this, and you assumed the liability because you, as the government, by requiring this, by pressuring people, and by immunizing the company who developed it from liability, have taken that liability upon yourself. That is how that works. And while you can't necessarily sue Fauci, as an employee of the federal government, he is immune. You can't necessarily sue the president or a particular congressperson, but you can sue the U.S. government right now. Whether you'll be able to sue them when all that data really gets processed and we have some long-term consequence information, we'll see. Whether there's enough proof to really narrow it down, and in states that had requirements in fields where there were requirements, for example, healthcare individuals, or truckers. Truckers were required to be vaccinated. Different things, different areas. Say the Teamsters Union says, you know what, you required our members to get vaccinated in order to maintain their Twix card. That's a requirement for their job. It's a legal requirement. They can't not have it, right? And you're requiring them to get vaccinated. Well, you swore it was safe. You said on national television repeatedly, this was absolutely safe, right? Well, they said that about Moderna too, right? They said it about the Johnson & Johnson one they pulled off the market, right? If it was perfectly safe, why is it no longer on the market? What about the people that took it? How many of them died? Can their families sue the federal government? Maybe. So yeah, that kind of thing, I think, regardless of the success of the lawsuits, like that's a whole nother story, right? If you're the congressperson who stood up and voted for that, voted to make these things required, your name is a co-signer on a bill that is pushing to do this. if you are somebody who bought stock in these companies before that announcement, yeah, yeah, hopefully you get voted out of office and basically told to never get involved in politics again. So I don't know. We're at 55 minutes. I'm going to call it a night. Any questions? We got one person watching right now. So if anything, is it still Mr. King Arthur, or is somebody else in here? Because I mean, I could keep going. If we have a topic, I'm just rambling though. I don't feel like transitioning from this to like fishing or joking about 40 millimeter, 40 Smith and Wesson. I plan to do some jokes on 40 Smith and Wesson and 10 millimeter and the 44 Magnum thing and all that jazz. Hey, how you doing? Are you still messing around with that rimfire stuff you were testing? I started watching the video where you finally got it working reliably. Listening to me rant. Yeah, I was watching the video where you finally were figuring out, what was going on with that one rifle, where you weren't getting any accuracy at all, and it was weird ammo and all that. It's been a while. It's been like a couple months, I think, since I watched it. But that was like the last problem child video, and then it was the reloading stuff I was watching. But there, I don't have any comments on that. I did think that case feeder thing that you got, the 3D printed one, was pretty damn cool. All my reloading stuff's packed up, and I don't have a case feeder for my Dillon. It'd be nice, but the Dillon one was astronomical money, and cool. I'll have to check it out. I have not gotten to watch a whole, I have a couple channels I watch religiously, and then I have stuff where I go back and I binge watch the stuff I want to watch from somebody that's like from 3 months worth. It's weird. That's awesome. It's always a pain when you just can't figure out what's going on with something. Like it works one time and then suddenly it doesn't. And you're like, well, I changed ammo, but when I go back to different ammo, it doesn't get better. And yeah, I haven't shot. I shot 300 blackout recently, but I haven't shot any of my other rifles. I haven't done any long range stuff. Haven't done anything outdoors. It's ridiculous. I live in Texas. I can shoot outdoors all year. Have not shot outdoors at all. I've got to imagine there is. There's no mechanical reason you couldn't do the exact same thing they did with yours on the Dillon. The only thing you might run into is the placement, because it's on the handle side. The case feed has to come down on the handle side. Your pull is right there. The round ejects in the same spot you're feeding a new one in. That's how to put it. Last round comes out here. I'm putting a new one in here, and I pull here. So not a lot of room, but I don't know. I mean, if you made it turn 90 degrees or even 45 degrees, so that it was the main mechanism for pushing the case in was parallel with the handle, you could probably do it. I imagine some smart person has figured it out. No, if I had the 650, I would have done the case feeder. That's like a set. You just always buy the case feeder. I've got a 550B that has some of the upgrades to a C and not all of them. And honestly, at this point, what I should probably do is sell it with the current market to get full price for it, right? I could probably get more than a new one goes for. And then later, when I get back to reloading, I'll buy a 650 or whatever, the 660, whatever the current equivalent is. Yeah, honestly, the last couple of years, most of my loading has been the single stage. I load precision stuff. I load small batch handgun stuff, and it just wasn't worth setting up the Dillon for each thing. I would set up a Dillon for bolt 223 or bolt 45 and just crank them out. Yeah, there'd be times where I'd load like 500 rounds on the Dillon and then not touch it for 3 months. But I'd load 1,000 rounds on the Lee, on the single stage Lee, but I'm doing it, it's 100 of this one, 100 of that one, 100 of that one, and they're not, it might be 5 cycles before I get back to the one I started on. No point in setting up the Dillon to do that. I will say I'm a Dillon's fanboy, but tweaking the Dillon to get happy. Yeah. Yeah. When I was getting ready to move to Texas, I had been waiting on the 9mm conversion kit for mine for like 6 months, a little longer than that, because I wanted to get it, load up all the 9mm stuff I had, and then put it away, right? There's a reason I have a progressive press, right? And I ordered it, never got it. It was when you looked, it was always, in process. And then it never changed. And months later, I think I was like a month out from Texas. I emailed them and said, hey, I am moving. I'm still waiting on this. If you're not going to get it to me before this date, I need to change the address. Here's the new address. And it showed up like 3 days later. I think they actually had lost the order in the rush, or they just said, "Hey, we'll pull one. We're not at him in the queue, but given the situation." But it didn't show up in time for me to actually get the press switched over and do it. I will say I love the Dillon. I love it, love it, love it. Converting a 550 to a different caliber or just a different setup, like if you're changing things, is not the most painless thing in the world. And if you have to take off the primer slide to clean everything, getting it readjusted and happy again is a just stupid pain in the ass. It'd be nice if you could take it out without changing the adjustments. Yeah, I think that they improved it drastically on later models. So I've never used one of the Hornady ones. I've only used Lee, RCBS, Rock Chucker, and the Dillon. And yeah, I can totally believe an 8-month wait, which is why I'm pretty sure that if I put that up on eBay, or just an ad locally, because I would rather not ship it. It's a heavy odd item. Yeah. Yeah, it's not perfect, but overall, it's pretty simple from what I've heard, and reliable. Like it when you make a change like that, it doesn't require you doing all your little fine tuning again. Um, Changing the dies was never an issue. That slides out, slide the new one in, and I do the Lee system, breech lock or whatever it is, on my single stage. I never had any problems with it. I'm sure it's not as precise as if I had a thread in only system, but whatever. I'm not loading for 1,000 yards, much less, a mile or something. But yeah, I could probably sell it. And the part that would kill me is I have a bunch of primers. Like I have, oh, I could probably sell 10,000 primers and not be, short on anything. And it's like, do I do it? That's a good bit of money, but yeah, good. I was toward the end, I was not super thrilled with my Dillon because it needed to be torn down, completely cleaned, tuned up, and put back. And it was driving me nuts because I was like, I don't want to put that time in because I just want to get this done. And I finally broke down and did it. and it behaved so much better. Once it got completely cleaned out and things decrudded, it was happier. That's my thought, because it's like, okay, I'm good, but if I start loading again, am I good for 3 years, 2 years? What's going on? Like, how long are the prices going to be fucked up? Are they going back at all? Are they, and but like, I would like to buy a motorcycle. Like, it's on my list of things to buy. And like, the extra grand or two cash would go a long way. Prices are high on motorcycles right now. Supply is limited. They know they got you. But if I sell 10,000 primers, that's $1,000 easy. If I sell the Dylan for the whole setup, I mean, for everything I've got for it, that's probably 600. So now I'm at, by the time I sell like some extra other junk I've got to whoever it is, probably talking like two grand, 2,500. We'll combine that with the other cash I've got sitting around, waiting for me to find a bike I want. Now I can pay cash for most of the bike. Like, if I do a payment, it's going to be tiny. And depending on what I get, maybe that's just cash done. So that'd be nice. But like you said, it's good insurance, because I might end up sucking it up and paying more money later and struggling to find it. That's the part that kills me with the primers. It's not the money. It's you can't get them. Finding them is so hard. Powder seems to come in stock more rapidly. Maybe you don't get the exact one you want, but whatever. I didn't get Vargan, I got BLC2 or one of the 1,000 other equivalents, right? Or you didn't get Red Dot, you got something else. I don't know. I don't use Red Dot, but I don't know why I picked that one. You didn't get CFE pistol, but you got 4227. I have a bunch of 4227. I started using it for my 357, and then I started using it for my 300 blackout for subs, and I just have a bunch of it. That was when I was smart. When I saw that I was using it for the 300 blackout, I bought a bunch. Yeah. I was pulling stuff out of my closet 2 days ago, trying to find a scope that I convinced I didn't sell with a rifle that it was on, but I might have. I could swear I didn't. I could swear I took it off. So I've been like digging into boxes, and I'm digging, and I'm going through, and I'm like, oh, look at these primers. Bunch of Federal primers. I don't normally use Federal primers. I use CCI, and I'm like, oh, a bunch of Federal. I had like 3,000 or 4,000 Federal rifle and pistol primers that I picked up while I was at Bass Pro, because they would get it in, and it was available. The price was fair. Done. That was back when they were still only like $35 for a pack, and I'm like, I'll take it. I'm seeing what's going on. I'll take them. Yeah, I don't have any problem with powder. Like, I don't see it as being an issue. I think people, if you want a particular thing, maybe you've got to be patient or trade with somebody or something. But it seems to come in stock all the time. It's just not. It doesn't sit. But yeah. I mean, it's not like it was. There was a brief period where, like, it was just gone. Like, it came in and it was immediately gone, and it was coming in very slowly. They seem to have gotten a handle on it, and I think people are less paranoid about it because there's so many options. Whereas primers, it's like, well, there's only so many different small pistol primers out there, and if we're not getting imports, and I don't know why we're not getting imports. I never got that explained to me. I guess they're just sitting in the ports is my only guess. But yeah, I mean, otherwise you're like, well, there's federal, there's CCI, and that's about it. I was like, really sad. My justification for preferring CCI is the box size. It was like I never cared about the primer itself. I've used Remington, I've used CCI, I used Federal. It was always the box size. I actually really prefer because I hand prime a lot of stuff on the strip primers, not loose. Oh, is the reloader stuff rare? I hadn't. It's not a brand I use. Um, Did not notice that, but I wouldn't like single Vitivari. I don't use it normally, so I would not have. If it was more rare, I would not have noticed. Yeah, it's really silly. Like if you're stacking it up in a a cupboard or a storage container or something, like the giant federal boxes take up so much space. And when I first got into reloading significant quantities, I got one of the APS strip systems, and that was how I loaded. And that was just convenient for me. And then it made it like later it was very tough to get them on APS strips. But I love the fact that the APS strip box is like 2/3 the size of the standard CCI box. It's much smaller. And I loved it because I was using it, I was putting the stuff away in my closet and I was living in a pretty small apartment at the time. And it was really convenient because I could stack like 10,000 primers because I had different you had some small pistol, small rifle, large pistol, uh, and it fit a very small area. And then I started using the regular ones when I started using the Dillon, and I was like, damn, this takes up way more space. Wow, did not know that. That's I if you were listening earlier, like that's that lens that we all look through, and was not aware it was hard to get because I wasn't looking. you know, it was like somebody was God, what was it? Somebody was talking about a particular bullet, and I was like, I've never even looked at it in the context of how does this work as a self-defense bullet? The Noslers. I've literally never used them. I've shot them, but I've never used them for a defensive round. Never done any testing. Never even looked it up. And the only reason I used them at all is they were literally on clearance, and it was the same price as buying FMJs. And I was like, well, why not? Take care, man. I'm gonna close this out. Be good. Stay out of trouble. I will go get caught up on your videos. What in the world just I've got my window a little open and somebody just dropped a pipe or something. Anyway, good night. End stream.